At 03:42 hours on December 20th, 2024, Belbek Airbase in occupied Crimea sat quiet under the winter darkness. Two Sukhoi Su-27 flanker fighters rested on the tarmac, one fully loaded with air-to-air missiles and glide bombs, engines warming up for what was supposed to be a dawn patrol over the Black Sea. The pilot was running through his pre-flight checklist, completely unaware that Ukrainian drones were already screaming toward his position at 120 kilometers per hour, flying low enough to kiss the treetops. His radar operators should have seen them coming. They would have, except for one small problem. The radars those operators needed to track incoming threats had been blown to scrap metal just 48 hours earlier by the same drones now inbound. The S-400 system protecting Belbek, Russia's supposed shield against aerial attack, was essentially blind. Its 92 N6 gravestone radar, the electronic eyes that should have been scanning 600 kilometers in every direction, was a smoking crater. The Nebo SVU early warning radar that could detect threats at 400 kilometers? Also gone. The Pantsir S two-point defense system that was supposed to be the last line of protection? Obliterated. Ukraine had systematically dismantled Belbek's entire air defense network in the previous strike, turning what Putin believed was a fortress into a shooting gallery. What happened next would cost Russia $70 million in destroyed aircraft, further expose Crimea as a liability rather than an asset, and prove that Ukraine had figured out the formula for turning Russia's stolen peninsula into a burning money pit. This wasn't just another drone strike. This was the continuation of a methodical dismantling operation that had transformed Crimea from Putin's prized conquest into his most expensive headache. The security service of Ukraine's Alpha Special Operations Center launched its drones from somewhere deep inside Ukrainian-controlled territory, likely from positions over 300 kilometers away from Belbek. These weren't hobby store quadcopters. These were long-range unmanned aerial vehicles capable of carrying explosive payloads weighing between 20 and 40 kilograms, flying for hours at altitudes low enough to avoid most radar detection. The drones navigated using a combination of GPS coordinates and pre-programmed flight paths, skimming over the Black Sea at wave-top level before turning north toward the Crimean coastline. At 03:47 hours, the lead drone crossed into Crimean airspace. No alarm sounded, no interceptor missiles launched. The base was completely deaf and blind to what was coming. Inside the control tower at Belbek, air traffic controllers were coordinating the departure schedule for morning patrol flights. They had 6 aircraft scheduled to launch within the next 2 hours, including the 2 Su-27s currently on the taxiway and apron. The controllers were focused on weather reports and flight vectors, completely unaware that their radar screens were showing them absolutely nothing about the real threats approaching their position. Here's the problem with modern air defense. It's a system, not a single weapon. You need early warning radars to detect threats at long range, tracking radars to follow those threats as they get closer, fire control radars to guide your missiles, and the actual interceptor systems to shoot things down. Remove any one of those components, and the entire chain breaks. Ukraine had removed 3 of them 2 days earlier. The 92 N6 radar that the S-400 system needed to track targets? Gone. The Nebo SVU that should have detected the drones when they were still 200 kilometers out over the Black Sea? Gone. Destroyed. The Pantsir S2 that was supposed to provide point defense? A pile of twisted metal and fried electronics. The first Su-27 that Ukraine was targeting sat on the taxiway with its full combat load. 2 R-27 medium-range air-to-air missiles on its outer wing pylons, 2 R-73 short-range infrared missiles on the inner pylons, and most importantly, 2 FAB-500 M62 glide bombs under its fuselage. Each of those glide bombs weighed 500 kilograms, contained 213 kilograms of high explosive, and had been fitted with UMPK glide kits that gave them a range of up to 70 kilometers when dropped from altitude. These were the same weapons Russia had been using to obliterate Ukrainian cities for months. The pilot sitting in that cockpit was probably planning to launch those bombs at Ukrainian positions in Kherson Oblast within the next hour. He never got the chance. At 03:51 hours, the lead Ukrainian drone descended to 50 meters altitude as it made its final approach to Belbek. The drone's operator, sitting safely in a command center hundreds of kilometers away, had a live video feed showing the airbase laid out below. He could see the Su-27 on the taxiway, its navigation lights blinking, exhaust shimmering from its engines. The second Su-27 sat roughly 400 meters away on an open apron. unprotected by any hardened shelter. Russian military doctrine calls for dispersing valuable aircraft in reinforced hangars to protect them from attack. But Belbek had run out of hangar space months ago after Ukraine destroyed several of those hangars in previous strikes. So Russia had started parking its jets out in the open, like cars in a Walmart parking lot. The drone operator lined up his approach vector, accounting for wind speed at 12 kilometers per hour from the northwest. He aimed for a point roughly 3 meters ahead of the Su-27's nose. At 03:52 hours and 17 seconds, the drone struck. 40 kilograms of high explosive detonated against 18,000 kilograms of aircraft loaded with jet fuel and live ordnance. The explosion was visible from Sevastopol, 30 kilometers to the south. The Su-27's fuel tanks, containing roughly 9,400 liters of kerosene-based jet fuel, ignited in a fireball that reached temperatures exceeding 1,800 degrees Celsius. That's hot enough to melt titanium, which is what significant portions of the Su-27's airframe are made from. The two R-27 missiles cooked off within seconds. Then the glide bombs went up. When 426 kilograms of military-grade high explosive detonates in an uncontrolled fashion, the results are catastrophic. The shockwave traveled outward at 7,000 meters per second, roughly 20 times the speed of sound. It shredded the Su-27's titanium airframe like tissue paper and sent fragments spinning across the taxiway at velocities that turned them into projectiles. One chunk of the tail section, weighing approximately 80 kilograms, flew 200 meters and punched through the wall of a maintenance hangar. Another piece of wreckage landed on the roof of the base's fuel depot 150 meters away. Meanwhile, the second Ukrainian drone was already inbound toward the second Su-27. This one sat on an open apron with no structures nearby, just an empty expanse of concrete with a $35 million fighter jet sitting in the middle like a target at a shooting range. The aircraft wasn't fueled or armed, which probably saved the surrounding infrastructure from even more damage. At 03:54 hours, while the first Su-27 was still burning, the second drone made its attack run. The drone impacted directly behind the cockpit, in the area where the Su-27's fuel tanks and major avionics systems are located. The explosion severed the aircraft's spine, breaking it into two distinct pieces. The forward section toppled forward and slammed into the concrete nose first. The rear section collapsed backward. Neither piece would ever fly again. Here's what Russia lost. Each Su-27 pilot requires approximately 350 hours of flight training to reach combat-ready status. That training costs roughly $5 million per pilot in fuel, instructor time, and simulator hours. Russia has now lost the ability to conduct two simultaneous combat air patrols over Crimea, forcing it to either extend the flight hours of remaining aircraft or accept gaps in coverage that Ukraine can exploit. The Sukhoi Su-27 flanker first entered service with the Soviet Air Force in 1985. But age doesn't mean obsolescence. The Su-27's original design was brilliant. A twin-engine, single-seat fighter with a combat radius of 1,500 kilometers, capable of reaching speeds of Mach 2.35 at high altitude. Its N001 Mayak pulse Doppler radar can track 10 targets simultaneously and engage one at ranges up to 100 kilometers. For air defense operations over Crimea, where the primary mission is intercepting Ukrainian drones and cruise missiles rather than dogfighting, the Su-27 remains highly effective. Russia has been using its Su-27s stationed at Belbek for three primary missions. First, defensive counter-air patrols over the Black Sea and southern Crimea. Second, offensive strikes using those FAB-500 glide bombs, which the jets can launch from positions over the Black Sea without entering Ukrainian air defense range. Third, escort duties for Russian bombers conducting longer-range missions. Losing two Su-27s means Russia can now conduct fewer simultaneous missions across all three categories. But here's the financial nightmare. Russia hasn't manufactured new Su-27s since 2000. The production lines have been retooled for more advanced variants like the Su-30 and Su-35. That means every Su-27 that gets destroyed is irreplaceable. Russia can't just order two more from the factory. Its only options are to pull Su-27s from other units defending different parts of Russia's airspace, which creates gaps in those areas, or to replace the destroyed aircraft with more modern and expensive jets like the Su-35s, which costs approximately $85 million per aircraft compared to the Su-27's replacement value of $35 million. At 03:58 hours, while both Su-27s were still burning, the third Ukrainian drone reached its target. Belbek's Air Traffic Control Tower. Control towers are the nervous system of any airbase, coordinating takeoffs, landings, and ground movements. They house the radio equipment that pilots use to communicate with the base, the radar displays showing where aircraft are located, and the computers managing flight schedules and fuel allocation. The drone struck the tower roughly 8 meters above ground level, right where the glass-walled observation deck meets the concrete base structure. The explosion blew out every window and collapsed the roof onto the radar equipment and communication systems inside. 3 Russian air traffic controllers died in the blast. 7 more were injured. But the human cost wasn't the primary impact. With the control tower destroyed, Belbek lost the ability to conduct normal flight operations. Any aircraft wanting to take off or land now had to coordinate with mobile control units, reducing the base's sortie rate by an estimated 60%. Think of it like trying to coordinate the movement of 20 cars in a parking lot while sitting in a closet, relying on people with walkie-talkies. That's what Russian air controllers at Belbek were facing. And this came on top of the radar losses from 2 days earlier. This wasn't a random strike. This was Phase 2 of an operation that began 48 hours earlier on December 18th, when the SBU launched its first attack. That initial strike destroyed 2 critical radar systems, a Pantsir S-2 air defense system and a MiG-31 interceptor. The Nebo SVU radar system destroyed on December 18th is a long-range early warning radar capable of detecting targets at ranges up to 400 kilometers. It operates in the VHF frequency band, making it particularly effective at detecting stealth aircraft and low-flying cruise missiles. Each Nebo SVU costs approximately $25 million and takes weeks to deploy because the massive antenna arrays need precise calibration. Losing one creates a blind zone 400 kilometers wide that Ukraine can exploit. The 92N6 Gravestone radar serves as the fire control radar for Russia's S-400 air defense system. Without this radar, the S-400's missiles are essentially unguided. It's like having a rifle with no sights. Each 92N6 radar costs roughly $50 million and requires specialized technical personnel to operate. The Pantsir S-2 point defense system represented Russia's last layer of protection. The Pantsir S-2 combines surface-to-air missiles with 30mm autocannons, engaging targets from 200 meters to 20 kilometers away. Each system costs approximately $15 million. Russia has lost dozens of Pantsir systems in Ukraine, and replacements are increasingly difficult because many electronic components come from Western manufacturers no longer selling to Russia. Then there was the MiG-31 that went up in flames on December 18th. The MiG-31 Foxhound is an interceptor designed to shoot down bombers before they could reach Soviet territory. It weighs 46,000 kilograms when fully loaded and can reach speeds of Mach 2.83, making it one of the fastest combat aircraft ever built. Its Zaslon radar can track 10 targets simultaneously at ranges up to 200 kilometers. Russia has been using MiG-31s to shoot down Ukrainian missiles. What's happening at Belbek is one example of a larger Ukrainian campaign to systematically dismantle Russia's military infrastructure in Crimea. Since February 2022, Ukraine has struck Crimea hundreds of times. The Black Sea Fleet has lost a third of its vessels. The fleet's flagship, the Moskva, went to the bottom in April 2022 after being hit by 2 Neptune missiles. Russia has pulled its remaining vessels back to Novorossiysk, over 250 kilometers from Crimea, essentially ceding control of the western Black Sea. The Kerch Bridge, which Putin opened in 2018 at a cost of $3.7 billion, has been attacked multiple times. The October 2022 truck bomb collapsed a section and damaged the railway span. A July 2023 naval drone attack caused further damage. The bridge has become a symbol of vulnerability rather than strength. Russia's air defense network across Crimea has been progressively degraded. Each successful war, and whatever remained of its illusion that Crimea was a safe rear area. The 2 Su-27s sat as twisted blackened wreckage on the tarmac, their titanium airframes melted into abstract sculptures of military failure. The control tower leaned at a precarious angle. Its observation deck collapsed into the structure below. Communication equipment reduced to sparking debris. Russian ground crews spent the next 12 hours pulling bodies from the rubble and trying to salvage anything that wasn't completely destroyed. They didn't find much worth saving. The strategic calculus is simple and brutal. Ukraine has figured out how to turn Crimea from Putin's prized possession into an expensive liability that bleeds resources Russia desperately needs elsewhere. Every S-400 system protecting Sevastopol is one less system defending Moscow. Every soldier garrisoning the peninsula is one less soldier attacking Ukrainian positions in Donetsk. Every ruble spent rebuilding destroyed infrastructure in Crimea is one less ruble available for Russia's collapsing economy. And drones before they reach their targets. The MiG-31's high-speed and long-range radar make it ideal for this mission. The aircraft can patrol at 20,000 meters altitude, then dive at supersonic speeds to intercept threats. Russia only has about 100 MiG-31s remaining across its entire military, with no production line because the aircraft hasn't been manufactured since 1994. By sunrise at 0712 hours on December 20th, the damage was catastrophic. 2 Su-27s destroyed, worth $70 million combined. The control tower in ruins, costing an estimated $5 million to rebuild. And most critically, the airbase's operational capacity reduced to perhaps 40% of normal. But zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Strike creates a gap in coverage that Ukraine exploits for future strikes, creating a cascading effect where defensive capabilities steadily erode. Russia faces cruel mathematics. It takes weeks or months to deploy new air defense systems, but Ukraine can destroy them in minutes. The strategic implications are profound. Crimea was supposed to be Putin's unsinkable aircraft carrier. Instead, it has become a resource sink. An estimated 160,000 Russian troops are stationed in Crimea, not fighting, but defending. That's roughly equivalent to the entire active-duty military of the United Kingdom, just sitting there, waiting for Ukrainian drones. From an economic standpoint, Crimea has hemorrhaged money since 2014. Russia has poured over $50 billion into infrastructure projects and military installations. Western sanctions have cost Russian businesses operating in Crimea an estimated $150 billion in lost revenue. Tourism has collapsed. The peninsula was attracting between 6 and 8 million visitors annually before 2022. By 2024, it's far more than that territory is worth. The 2 burning Su-27s at Belbek are just the latest installment in Putin's very expensive Crimean subscription service. Except, unlike Netflix, he can't cancel it without admitting defeat. So Russia will keep paying, keep losing aircraft and air defense systems, and soldiers, and money, while Ukraine keeps sending drones to collect what's owed. It's a debt that compounds daily, and the interest rate is absolutely punishing. Bye for now. Every MiG-31 patrolling over Sevastopol is one less available to defend against NATO reconnaissance flights. Every soldier stationed in Crimea is one less available to attack Ukrainian positions in Donetsk. Ukraine has recognized this dilemma and is ruthlessly exploiting it. The strikes weren't just about destroying aircraft. They were about forcing Russia to make impossible choices. Does Putin send more air defense systems to Crimea, leaving other areas vulnerable? Does he pull aircraft from other bases, creating gaps elsewhere? Does he accept reduced coverage and risk more strikes? There are no good answers. By the time the smoke cleared over Belbek Airbase on the morning of December 20th, Russia had lost $70 million in fighter jets, a control tower. Putin stole Crimea thinking it would be a fortress. Instead, it has become a target-rich environment where Ukraine practices its long-range strike capabilities with increasing precision and devastating effect. The SBU's promise to continue its systematic work in Crimea wasn't a threat. It was a guarantee. Belbek will be hit again. So will other bases across the peninsula. So will the Kerch Bridge, the naval facilities at Sevastopol, the ammunition depots, the fuel storage sites, and anything else Russia foolishly believes is safe. Ukraine has demonstrated that it has the capability, the will, and the weapons to strike anywhere in Crimea anytime it chooses. Russia's only question now is how much more it's willing to lose before admitting that holding on to stolen territory cost. Those numbers had fallen by an estimated 70%. Every military asset Ukraine destroys represents not just replacement cost, but opportunity cost. The 2 Su-27s cost $70 million to replace, but add training costs for replacement pilots, lost operational capability, and reduced strategic flexibility, and the true cost exceeds $100 million. The radars and air defense systems destroyed on December 18th cost hundreds of millions combined, and some may be impossible to replace quickly due to sanctions. Russia's dilemma is that it cannot afford to defend Crimea adequately, but it also cannot afford to lose it. The peninsula has enormous symbolic importance to Putin. Giving up Crimea would be viewed as catastrophic defeat, but defending Crimea drains resources from the war effort elsewhere. Every S-400 battery deployed to Crimea is one less protecting Russian cities.